1699. The Ottoman Empire, once unstoppable, stands on the brink of disaster. After a crushing defeat at Vienna, its enemies close in. But in a small town called Karlowitz, diplomats gather not for war, but for peace. The treaty they sign won't just end a conflict. It will redraw the map of Europe forever. Cue title card. The Treaty of Karlowitz, the peace that broke the Ottomans, over a burning parchment effect. Welcome to the channel. Today we're uncovering one of history's most consequential peace deals, the Treaty of Karlowitz. Signed in January 1699, this agreement didn't just end the 16-year Great Turkish War. It marked the moment Europe finally turned the tide against the Ottoman Empire, a superpower that had dominated the Balkans for centuries. But here's what makes this treaty fascinating. The Ottomans never lost a major war before this. They'd besieged Vienna just 16 years earlier. So why did Sultan Mustafa II suddenly accept humiliating terms? Why give up Hungary, Transylvania, and key fortresses to Austria, Poland, and Venice? For centuries, the Ottoman Empire seemed unstoppable. Their janissaries were the most feared soldiers in Europe. Their treasury overflowed with the wealth of 3 continents. But in 1683, when Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa launched history's largest siege against Vienna, something snapped. The Ottomans weren't just defeated, they were humiliated. For the first time, Christian Europe realized the terror of the world could bleed. What followed was a 16-year revenge campaign. At Zenta in 1697, Prince Eugene of Savoy annihilated 30,000 Ottoman soldiers in just 2 hours, the empire's worst defeat since Timur. The Sultan's army fled in panic, abandoning their treasury, their guns, even their sacred war banners. For the Holy League, this was proof. God was on their side now. But by 1699, victory had become a trap. The Ottomans were bankrupt, their provinces rebelling. Yet the Holy League was exhausted too. Austria's treasury was empty, Poland's king was distracted, and Venice's navy couldn't hold its new conquests. The brutal truth, neither side could deliver a knockout blow. Now diplomats faced an impossible task. How to negotiate peace when both empires needed to save face, but neither could admit weakness. Sultan Mustafa II took power in 1695, inheriting an empire in freefall. At just 30 years old, he faced rebellions from Anatolia to Algeria, a bankrupt treasury, and an army that hadn't been paid in years. His grandfather had besieged Vienna. Now he was sending groveling letters to Europe's kings. His mission at Karlowitz? Not victory, survival. Across the table sat Prince Eugene of Savoy, the French-born military genius who crushed the Ottomans at Zenta. Ruthless, ambitious, and openly contemptuous of Turkish barbarians, he arrived with 3 goals: lock the Ottomans out of Hungary forever, secure Austria's Balkan frontier, and, privately, humiliate the Sultan so thoroughly they'd never recover. But the real drama came from the sidelines. Poland's envoys demanded the return of lands lost decades earlier. Venice's Doge wanted Ottoman ports for Christian shipping. And watching from the shadows, Russia's spies, taking notes for Tsar Peter, who'd soon launch his own wars. This wasn't diplomacy, it was a feeding frenzy. The prize? Hungary's wheat fields, Transylvania's gold mines, and control of the Danube River, the lifeline of Southeast Europe. For the Ottomans, losing these meant becoming a second-rate power. For the Habsburgs, a chance to finally call themselves the new Roman Empire. For 5 grueling months, the Ottomans played for time. They delayed with Ramadan observances, disputed every border mile, and secretly hoped for a miracle. Perhaps a revolt in Vienna, or Persian armies attacking from the east. But Prince Eugene's victories at Zenta and Senta had left them no cards to play. His ultimatum was simple: sign by winter's end, or we take Belgrade. On January 25th, the Ottomans made their final gamble. They waited for a relief force from Bosnia. When scouts found only frozen corpses in the snow, the Grand Vizier knew there would be no salvation. That night, the Sultan's seal was pressed to parchment in the dimmest candlelight, as if hoping Europe wouldn't notice. The terms were catastrophic. Austria swallowed Hungary whole, a kingdom they'd fought over for 150 years. Transylvania's gold mines now funded Habsburg wars instead of Ottoman ones. Poland reclaimed Podolia, erasing their 1672 humiliation. Venice took Dalmatia, turning the Adriatic into their private lake. This wasn't just land lost. It was the first time the Ottomans legally acknowledged defeat in perpetuity. No temporary truce, no Allah wills it, just surrender. When news reached Vienna, churches rang bells for 3 days. In Istanbul, the Sultan ordered all copies of the treaty burned, but the whispers spread anyway. The unconquerable have been conquered. Even the Janissaries, those butchers of empires, knew their world had ended. But watch the shadows. Russian agents had attended every session. Within 20 years, they'd used this treaty as a blueprint to carve up the Black Sea. The Ottomans' greatest humiliation? They hadn't even met their most dangerous enemy yet. Overnight, Austria transformed from a besieged kingdom into Europe's new superpower, absorbing Hungary's vast wheat fields and Transylvania's gold. Venice reclaimed its Adriatic dominance, strangling Ottoman trade. In Poland, after decades of losses, they finally breathed easy. But their victory lap would be short-lived. But the real bomb detonated in Istanbul's psyche. For 300 years, the Sultan's rule depended on one unshakable idea. Allah destined them to conquer. Now, from the coffee houses of Cairo to the mountains of Albania, whispers spread. If the Europeans broke them, why can't we? The empire's glue had melted. Meanwhile, in Moscow, a 6'8" Tsar read the Karlowitz terms with predatory delight. Peter the Great immediately copied Europe's playbook. Within months, he strong-armed the Ottomans into surrendering Azov through mere threats of war. The message? Your weakness is my invitation. Karlowitz became a blueprint for dismemberment. Like vultures to a carcass, Europe returned. 1718, Hasarovitz stripped Serbia. 1774, Kuchuk-Kainarka surrendered Crimea. Each treaty used Karlowitz's language. Each loss normalized the last. The sick man diagnosis wasn't just metaphor, it was strategic reality. Karlowitz didn't just redraw borders, it rewrote history's trajectory. The treaty froze Ottoman expansion permanently, turning their empire from Europe's nightmare into its patient. Here's what gets overlooked. Karlowitz invented modern diplomacy. No more backroom deals between two kings. Now coalitions negotiated as equals. The system that today governs the UN, its DNA traces to this Serbian winter. And the delicious irony? Those who feasted at Karlowitz would choke on their own victories. Austria's new lands made it bloated and complacent. Venice's Adriatic monopoly stagnated its innovation. Only Russia, the observer nobody invited, would truly win the long game. 3 centuries later, we still live with Karlowitz's ghosts. The borders it drew fuel modern Balkan tensions. The power dynamics it created shaped east-west divides. Few pieces of parchment so small have cast so long a shadow. This treaty changed the world. And if you've made it this far, you're clearly the kind of person who geeks out on history like I do. That deserves a like. Now I'm curious, was Karlowitz Europe's triumph or a time bomb? Some say it saved Christendom. Others argue it created the powder keg that exploded in 1914. Where do you stand? Drop your take below. Best comment gets pinned. For the full prequel to this drama, watch How Vienna Defied the Ottomans. Link up now. Smash subscribe so you don't miss next week's deep dive on Peter the Great's revenge. Until then, history never sleeps. Wink at camera as quill pen scratches channel logo.